Hello everyone, and welcome to Poetic Terms 101. Have you ever wondered how poets do what they do? In this video, we are going to cover some basic poetry terms. All of the definitions in this video come from the Poetry Foundation's glossary of poetic terms, which can be found on their website. And all examples of poems used will be linked down in the description. So let's get started. The first term we are going to talk about today is free verse. A lot of contemporary poetry is written in free verse. Free verse contains non-metrical, non-rhyming lines that closely follow the natural rhythms of speech. This is in contrast to the use of a form, such as a sonnet, haiku, or limerick. Free verse often does not rhyme, but a poet may employ rhyme at times for special sound or meaning. So let's look at an example of this. Here we have some lines from the poem Theory of Relativity. Waking, you discover our life lasted a few minutes. Only women in paintings live slower. As we can see, there is no rhyme and no pattern of syllables in these lines. The rest of the poem continues on this way, making it a good example of a free verse poem. Now, let's move on to some elements that poets use within their poems. The simile and metaphor. A simile is a comparison between different things using the terms like, as, or than. A metaphor is also a comparison, but it does not use these terms. So for example, you could say, the cloud is like a marshmallow, and that would be a simile because you're using the term like. To make it a metaphor, all you need to do is remove the term like, and it becomes the cloud is a marshmallow. Both phrases are comparing a cloud to a marshmallow, but the metaphor sounds a little bit more direct than the simile does. So now let's look at some lines from the poem Hunger. And just a quick note on this, these slashes in the middle of the lines actually indicate line breaks in the original poem. Some of these lines here are partial lines, and it would have looked strange had I tried to format it as the poem is actually formatted. So instead, I used the slashes to indicate where a line actually breaks. I stand on the street corner in the rain and coax water into my mouth like a woman who doesn't know the fullness of the sea. As we can see here, that is a simile. It uses the term like a woman who doesn't know. So this is a comparison between the speaker and a woman who doesn't know the fullness of the sea, and it uses the term like. Now let's look at the next lines. I am a hollow instrument, a sacred text. This is a metaphor. It does not use any of the terms that a simile requires, yet it is a comparison between the speaker and a hollow instrument. Our next term is personification. Personification is giving human attributes to an abstraction, a thing, or a non-human form. A great example of personification is in these lines from the poem Hypostasis. Grass murmurs the hushed prayers of caged saints. To say a daughter's name as gently, even this becomes oil for the lantern of our poor earth. Now, we know that grass can't actually murmur prayers, but this phrase gives a very, very specific sound to the grass. It also creates a unique image. Our next terms are enjambment and endstop. Enjambment simply means a sentence or phrase runs over from one poetic line to the next without terminal punctuation. Endstop is the opposite of this, meaning ending a poetic line at a grammatical boundary or break. So let's compare these two lines from Sonnet for Thunder Lovers and Primary Colors. You're more than soda fizz, than sparklers lit for kids at play, than fireflies flit in sky. The first line is enjambed, while the second line is endstopped. See, we can see the first line has no punctuation, and the sentence continues on into the next line. Whereas in the second line, it ends with a period, and that is where the sentence ends. Enjamming or endstopping a line allows a poet to play with the flow of a poem or even alter how it is read. Our final term for this video is allusion. Allusion is a reference to a historical, mythic, or literary person, place, event, or movement. Allusions can be tricky to spot because typically the reference does not come with an explanation. Sometimes the reference is even inferred rather than directly stated. The easiest allusions to find are often when a historical figure's name is directly given in the poem. So let's look at this line from the poem titled, "Sometimes I Think My Body Leaves a Shape in the Air." Creeley says, "The plan is the body. What if he's wrong?" This line directly references Robert Creeley, a well-known poet who lived from 1926 to 2005, and one of his poems. Though the allusion is direct, the poet gives no further explanation as to how this fits within the rest of the poem. Poets use allusion often, connecting their work to the outside world and other poetic voices. And there you have it. Poets use a lot of different terms and techniques in their poetry, and these are just a few of the ones commonly found throughout their verse. For more of these terms, you can visit the Poetic Terms glossary on the Poetry Foundation's website. On this slide, we first have the Poetry Foundation's main website, and then below that is the address for the glossary. As always, thank you for watching, and happy National Poetry Month. Bye!